vice chair, so I can call the meeting to order. And I thought we'd just spend a couple of minutes just to go around the group and introduce ourselves, since many of us, including myself, hadn't met with Steve. I'll start with myself. I have been living in Wellfleet for about the last 20 years, having retired from jobs mostly as a chemist in industry, and lived in various places, for the most part, Andover and Boston before I came to Wellfleet. I'm also chairman of the Natural Resource Advisory Board, and I'm work with the Friends of Herring River on the Herring River Restoration Project. So Sonia, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, at least I can.
Yeah. All right. Well, my name is Sonia Woodman. I've been living in Wellfleet since 2006. I started working as a shell fisherman a few years ago, which kind of gave me interest in this rights of public access group, just wanting to ensure that shell fishermen have access to the tide flats throughout Wellfleet. And yeah, I suppose this is my first time on a town committee, so it's been a learning process as well. I'm just kind of seeing where I can help and be involved, and yeah, so.
Good. Melissa?
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I am also a shell fisherman. I started shell fishing in Wellfleet about almost three years ago, and I have explored a lot of the area. I moved to the Cape about 4 years ago, and have found myself walking over trails and access points to the water that I wasn't quite sure was actually public access or private lands, and wondering what was technically legal. And so that's how I kind of got intrigued by the formation of this committee. Sorry. And I watched the Irene Payne video, so I saw how much of Wellfleet's ways to the water and the woods have really changed and been privatized. So I thought it was important to get involved, especially now. So
Great. I think Steve, I'll call you next, but you should be aware that the person just talking was Melissa Yao. How do you say Yao?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. A little later in the program, we'll talk about a Melissa Lowe, who is head of Mass Audubon. So we have to be careful not to confuse the two. So Steve, you're on.
Okay, I've owned a house in Wellfleet for 36 years or so, vacation home, and 2 years ago I retired and started living in Wellfleet. I'm not a shell fisherman. I don't admire you guys. You work in very weird weather, but you have to work during low tide. I got asked if I would be interested in being on this committee by a previous selectman, and I said sure, yes. I thought we were going to be talking about town landings until I the last 3 recorded meetings and found out it's pretty narrow, and so I'm here to do what I can.
Welcome.
Okay.
And that your comment about public landings, that's interesting. We'll bring that up in a bit. Is exactly what our charter might be in the long term. So save that idea. We do not have a chairman at the moment. Jim Falcone had been the chairman, but he retired from the committee last fall. we have a clerk who's Sonia and a vice chair who is myself. I want to make it clear I am not in the running for chair. I don't know about Sonia. We have two possibilities. One is to someone volunteers to be chair. We can elect them as such. The other idea I thought is we might, over the next 2 or 3 meetings, rotate that position, and then when people got to know each other better and knew what the committee was doing, we could make a choice. So discussion? Is anyone volunteering, first of all?
I'm
Well,
not,
I like the idea of rotating to get an
Yeah.
idea of what the position actually entails.
Okay,
I would agree
Yeah.
with that, just because this is my first time serving on a committee, so I'm not totally sure what that position would mean. So try it out for a week kind of thing.
Yeah, Robert are kind of a mystery to me, so.
so Steve, that's all right with you to rotate things?
Okay,
Okay. So I shall continue today. Maybe Melissa, you could do the next meeting and then we'll go from there.
Sure.
And since I have been the chair of a committee, and I will work with you about setting up the next meeting and the agenda and things like that. Happy to do that. So we don't have any officers besides the ones we started out with, who are Sonia and myself. We get down to business. Most of the meetings we've had in the past have been concerned with 3 issues, all on Lieutenant Island. One of which has to do with access on the southwest corner. And the other has to do with access at what some people in town call Turtle Point. It's off of Way 100, about halfway out the islands. And then there's, just before you get onto the bridge, before getting onto the island, on the left, there's an important pathway down the beach there that's used by shell fishermen. It's got a big hole in it. It's in each of these issues, it's important to understand what is the position of Mass Audubon, because in each case there's Mass Audubon property crossed. And it's also important to understand the role of the people who live there, because they are in some ways affected. On February the 1st at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa Lowe, who's the chairman of, as I said, chairman of Mass Audubon here in Wellfleet, is proposing a Zoom meeting to discuss the situation for all of those properties. And I believe she has an acceptance from Nancy Civetta to also join, and to Bill Fuss, I hope I have the name right, I may well not, who is on the Homeowners Association in Lieutenant Island. I have been invited because I've been involved in some earlier meetings. I will, if you can make that time, February the 1st at 2 p.m., I don't know the tide, I will try to be sure that we can all at least listen in. It's a bit of a tricky situation, because if we all listen in, under some circumstances, we would look like a quorum and the meeting would have to be posted. So I think if we listen in and don't discuss, it's just for information, we don't have to post it. So how many of you could make the meeting and how many would like to listen in?
I'd like to make the meeting if possible.
Okay,
If that's-
Sonia.
Me too.
Okay. Steve?
I'm looking at my calendar, but I think that's okay.
Okay,
Yes, it's okay.
okay. Well, then I will check with Melissa Lowe and be sure that's okay with her. I think she would probably welcome it because having this committee behind the projects is important. Just as background, when we talk about the first issue, the southwest corner issue, currently shell fishermen, when they access the flats there, either take a path that crosses Audubon territory or they take a path that crosses a private owner. And both Audubon and I suppose by not complaining, the private owner accept people walking to the flats. But I think the idea of driving to the flats is probably not going to be acceptable.
John, who's
We
the,
may want to push back on that, and which would be our right as a public access committee, but there's a big difference between driving rights and walking rights.
John, whose private property is being crossed?
The parcel number is map, I think it's map 40,
Yes.
159. And I don't know that, there are two parcels you have to cross is 4182 and 4159, or 41, I've forgotten the map number. 159 is private. What you do, Steve, if you look at a map, you have to cross public ways.
I'm looking at a map and I have crossed that 159.
Yeah, well, that's private. 182 is town of Wellfleet.
170, 171, and 180, 172, 183, I think it is.
182, 170, 171 are all town of Wellfleet.
Okay. Oh, I say 82. Yeah.
Hi, John, it's Helen.
Yeah,
So information for all of you. Jim and I had quite a lot of exchange about this, good exchange. I have 3 questions, or the select board rather, because the select board is approved asking town council these questions. About our status or our use of subdivision ways. John, I believe that part of the way that you referred to as a private road, somebody's property is actually just a subdivision way. You may know more than I do, but I went into it pretty far. And that has a different status than if it's like a private road, like a driveway or something. So I just wanted to put that out there. And the minute we get back from town council the answer to 3 questions about just that, you will be copied with it. Thank you.
okay.
Helen, the map shows that path that we're talking about goes right through the middle of the lot.
Yeah, well, if it's in a subdivision, and that's all a subdivision there, okay? It's a way that's shared by everybody in the subdivision. So it is a private road, right?
Well,
But
this
it's
path,
not the same as being owned by somebody.
the path is not on a way. Path is going right across the lot, 159.
Is it a path or a 2-track?
It's
dirt road.
It's a path.
walking
Okay,
path.
thank you. Well, still, okay, thank you.
I think I should have mentioned there's another issue that had come up at the southwest corner this summer, is that it was very popular in the summer, more than usual, to go off to the beach. There are a lot of people down here trying to escape the COVID in Boston and such like places. And there were big parking problems on the road going out to the southwest corner. And at the last discussion we had, the Owners Association was going to look into whether they could use some of that owner-owned way as parking. And that the advantage of that was to keep people from parking on the salt marshes, which abut the road, and clear off some of the congestion. I think part of the meeting on February the 1st is to see whether there's been any progress made about resolving that issue. So there's several bits of pieces in play. Melissa, Sonia, do either of you shellfish off the southwest corner?
I have before. I know you mentioned truck access and whether that's something we can possibly get out there. I don't work there a lot. I usually, if I work on that side of the island, I tend to park up in the neighborhood. There's an access point kind of in the north corner. But for the most part, I mean, a lot of those Lieutenant Island access points or areas that we use for shellfishing, we do tend to need to walk quite a bit. So we are used to that, I feel like, you know. So to not have direct vehicle access doesn't, you know, it's not totally necessary. You know, it could make life easier, but.
Well, the point you use for access is with permission of some private owners.
Yeah, so it is in the neighborhood. I have to look at a map right now. It's on, I actually know one of the private owners there,
Yeah.
but there is a public access point. There's not much of a parking situation there because it's kind of at the end of the road and there's really only like one position you can park in between the properties. So, I mean, I feel like if there's more than one person trying to shellfish out of that spot, there's nowhere to really park unless you know someone. So.
Would you make a note to yourself to help us locate that? Because you use the word public access and I hadn't realized that.
Yeah, it's just a path and it goes to a set of stairs down onto the beach. So I'd have to pull it up on a map.
Yeah, well, not necessarily right now, but when you have a chance, because that's something that we should be aware of.
Mhm.
Melissa?
Is it this here?
Yeah, so it's confusing with the paper roads to tell exactly because they're obviously different, but it's on that corner.
Okay, well, I'll look at a map.
Yeah.
I'll look at a map too, but still, it'd be good if you could confirm it to us.
Yep.
I would add, I think we discovered that it's been a while since we've had truck access to that point as shell fishermen anyway. And I think we might have come to some sort of agreement that we would keep it the way that it was, but it was important to get emergency access through that point. And I don't know if we have an update on that.
Well, that's a good point. I had forgotten about that. That we have to be sure that comes up on at the meeting later. It was particularly important to Jim to get some emergency access. So we need to remember that.
So was that issue of getting rid of the rocks? We
Yeah,
discussed
it was
that.
turning rock into gates. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been out to southwest corner, not shellfishing sometimes. It's just a place I like to walk, my wife and I. And I noticed some shellfishermen coming back from the flats, and it looks like a long, hard trek.
Yeah.
And I have seen on some beaches around Cape Cod that they lay down a blue mat, string of blue mat. And if you could pull something like a cart along that mat, it's a lot easier pull. And is that something you'd be interested to explore as an idea?
I think that could certainly help. You know, I mean, a lot of shell fishermen use a tote and kind of drag it. So I'm not sure if it would help with that. I use a cart myself, so I think that sounds great. But I
Okay, so
suppose
we
it
have
depends.
a yes vote on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Who would own the blue mat?
excuse me.
Who would own the blue mat? I assume it's one of
Uh,
the fishermen. bring
I
it.
think that would have to come out of there's several places we could get money, maybe from the Shellfish Department, maybe from the SPAT organization. I have a note down here about budget. I wanted to add that to the agenda. Maybe we could talk about that now briefly. As I said, I'm on the Natural Resource Advisory Board, and for a number of years, we've had a little over $1,000 budget from the town of Wellfleet. It's voted every year by annual town meeting, and allows NREB to cover some small costs. We've used it to support the Wellfleet Harbor Conference. We used it to help the town and put in a number of plantings at the Duck Harbor Pond Landing, which was becoming eroded. This might, if we had a similar sort of amount of money, we wouldn't have to go begging. So we may be a little late for this town meeting, although I could send a note to the town manager and see if we could get on the budget.
I think
But
that
certainly a year from now, we should do that.
I think that'd be a great idea. We're probably going to have to come to a point where we'll need some resources to fix up some sort of access. I do think though that spending it on a blue mat might be a little bit preemptive, or I've heard that they're expensive. So I don't know.
I have no idea what the price is, and that could well kill the idea.
Yeah, but we should look into a budget.
Yeah.
John,
Yes, Ellen.
before you explore that, you might want to talk with a health conservation agent to find out if it's within 100 feet of the resource, you know, of what's wet. You would need permission from Conscom to use something like that, which they might give you, you know, because it would be less wear and tear and less erosion. But you do need to check before you go spending money on it. Thank you.
Helen, that's a good point. Almost everything we do here is got a potential Conscom oversight issue, because it's all near marsh, near wetland, near beaches, all of which are under the oversight of the Conservation Commission.
I always tell people, if you're going to go on a site visit, or you're just going to go, one of you, take 100-foot tape measure, okay? Because it's 100 feet from the edge of the wetland or resource. You see what I mean? So you can really get a sense of it, or you can do it on a map, but sometimes the wet moves, you know, what's wet as defined by vegetation or moisture, tide, whatever, can be different than what's on the map. Anyway, if you go on a Conscom site visit, you'll hear them talking just like this. Thank you.
It's also important, by the way, at this meeting on February 1st, Hillary Lemos, who is the conservation agent for the town, will be at the meeting. So we'll get the conservation input as well. As a committee, we have spent a lot of time on Lieutenant Island. And I thought it would be useful to ask each of us, not necessarily in order to speak up, if there are any other particular issues around the whole town of Wellfleet, not just shellfish issues, but general access issues that you would like to see put on our agenda sometime in the future. I have a small list myself, but I'd rather hear from the rest of the team first. So has anyone wish to speak up, throw out some ideas?
I just have a question regarding, I know we were looking at some material before regarding Chipman's Cove. And I wasn't totally clear on what we were looking at. Was that another access point we were looking to?
Well, let's deal with Chipman's Cove first, and then come back, because part of my list included another point on Chipman's Cove.
Okay.
The issue is that I had added to this agenda at the last minute had to do of a discussion with the Open Space Committee. Chairman of the Open Space Committee is Bruce Herder, and he and I communicate back and forth a lot because I'm chairman of the Natural Resource Advisory Board. But the main focus of the Open Space Committee recently is to look at properties which are owned by the town under the control of the select board, as town properties are, unless the town meeting votes to assign them to some other entity in town. And the Open Space Committee has proposed to, over the years, and there'll be other items on the annual town meeting ballot this spring, to transfer properties from the Board of Selectmen control to the Conservation Commission control, which the thought is that requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting, and that the thought is that gives these properties added protection and added oversight. Of the group that the Open Space Committee wants to propose this year, there are 3 properties up on the north end of Indian Neck. One of them is on the bay side, and it's between where the town parking is, that beach, and Burton Baker Beach. And the other 2 properties extend over into Chipman's Cove. This is right south of I think what's the Whiteman landing on the Chipman's Cove side. So this is way up in the northwest corner of Chipman's Cove. And the first of those 2 properties covers the woods and upland before you get to the cove. The second property is Salt Marsh and Beach, extending out into the cove. According to the regulations of the Conservation Commission in managing these properties are open to public access as long as there's no vehicles. You can walk along it. Presumably you could drag a cart along it, but nothing motorized. And I hope you all got a copy of those regulations.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we have a concern about this from a shellfishing point of view? I've never seen much shellfishing done at the northwest corner of Chipman's Cove. Most of the big shellfishing point is down at the southeast. I personally am in an interesting situation because on the one hand, being on NRAB, I'm saying, well, this is great conservation land. On access, I might be saying, well, we have to be careful about preserving access in the long run. I see that Nancy is here and would like to make a comment. I know you signed in on, Nancy. I can see you're typing, but I can't. I
Here I
haven't
am.
heard you. Okay, hi.
I raised my hand, but then I just,
All right, well, here you go.
well, the comment I was going to say before is that I don't think it's too late to ask the town administrator about a budget, because I think the budget is still being assembled right now. So that you might want to try and do that.
Good advice.
About
Thank you.
this parcel at the northwest corner of Chipman's, there is commercial access along Nauset Road before you get to what we call the middle pass. So the middle, you go by Burton Baker and the road turns to the right and then to the left. And along that straightaway there, that is a frequently used commercial shellfisherman landing or access point, and they walk across those two parcels that are up for the to be put under Conservation Commission. There is control. There's no vehicle access there. Then as you continue forward and you go by what we call the middle pass on the left to get out to the Indian Neck recreational only area, that's kind of the area. There north is the Bayside parcel, and I see no problem because there's already established footpaths to get there from 3 different locations on Indian Neck. So I don't see that as an issue. Then once you get to the Indian Neck parking lot and go to the right, there are people who park and drive a little bit also like out onto the beach at low tide and to the right, and this is permitted. And so they'll go as far as they can go before the beach grass, and that is another commercially accessed route to Chipman's. And that might be in parcel, I think, is it the two, it's one of the two on the Chipman's side. And in addition, we have people that, and this wouldn't be a problem because it's foot access, but who park in the Indian Neck parking lot or on that sandy path that goes down to the canoe racks. People park there in the summer to access kayaks and canoes and boats because there's a town rack there. And then when Chipman's is open, it's actually quite heavily used by recreational people who come from that side as opposed to the old Pier Road side. So those two parcels that are on the Chipman side, that we do not want those to get changed. And right now, the only thing that I could see that might change is the vehicle access off of the end of the Indian Neck parking lot and going to the south. And they stay off the grasses. There's not a ton of people that do it. Most people park in the sand circle. But that area, that western side of Chipman's Cove does get used by both commercial and recreational fishermen.
It was my understanding that the vehicle access to the right, as you go towards Chipman's Cove and then turn your truck south, that the point at which you have to stop where it turns into a footpath is actually north of the parcel that we're looking at. So
Okay.
I thought that I looked at the satellite map and it seems to be the case. I don't know if anybody else has ideas.
I did not do that, so that sounds good.
In terms of, I mean, I haven't used that side of Chipman's that much, but I know there's the portion of Nauset Road that kind of comes around the corner. Nancy, did you say that some people cut across there for shellfishing as well? Because I feel like I see people on that side. I'm just not sure where they
just park on the side of the road.
They park on the side of the road. So would the parking be affected if this parcel were to be taken up by the conservation?
I don't think so.
No, okay.
I don't think so.
And foot traffic would be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in general, it's the driving across which creates which creates any problem issues.
Mhm.
Nancy, I had never been concerned about access on the bay side toward
Yep.
the west, because there are lots of ways to get there, Burton Baker or through the town parking lot.
Yep, I
Um,
agree.
I had just been concerned about the Chipman's Cove area. It might be useful to say, when does the Shellfish Advisory Board next meet?
It's next Wednesday.
Right.
I'm just gonna
Right.
pull up that, assessor's map that Melissa was just saying.
I just think it would be helpful for a letter from the Shellfish Advisory Board, open space, maybe with a copy to us, just sort of going through what you said. On the Chipman side. It's
Yep.
The Open Space Committee, they basically quoted some of the stuff I said in the harbor management plan about how wonderful salt marshes were. And so, as I said, I'm sitting on a fence. I thought I'd get up at town meeting and go to one microphone and say yes, and go to the other microphone and say no.
Well, I don't see an access issue, but I do think that a letter is a good idea as well, because we're going to have people questioning this. So if we're going to be voting at a town meeting, then a letter of support would be important,
Yeah.
or whatever the decision is that the Shellfish community comes to. That's just my opinion.
But as I say, if it's walking across, with a cart or not, that's fine. It's been going on. So I think we have to respect that. But the Open Space Committee should be aware of this issue, and town meetings should be aware of it. And people can make their own decision. There'll be several other items from open space on the agenda, and I see no issue from those. Those are way upstream. One of them happens to be a small beach, which is used by local residents, but there's no parking. They all walk to it. So no issue. I think, Nancy, it would just help. It'd help me. I mean, I asked the question because I really didn't understand, know what's going on there, and be in a better position to comment. So thank you.
So you know how I emailed you and I said, would it be helpful also if the Shellfish Department put something together that just said we would like to maintain access as exists today on these
Yes.
parcels? And I did just look it up on the town's GIS on the assessor's map, and I agree with Melissa that it doesn't look like it's going to affect it because it's a different town parcel. But just to kind of set the precedent and the expectation
Yes.
that we approve or we agree with this, as it does protect our wetland areas, as long as the access that is enjoyed today doesn't change in the future or something like that.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks for doing that.
And I did ask Shellfish Advisory to put this on their agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's
You're
terrific. Now, I'm glad that question got asked. Back to my original point, are there other issues that members of the board, this committee, not members of the board, this committee would like to see on future agendas?
I think the Open Space Committee was considering Seawall's gutter for putting into conservation, and they ultimately decided not to. I think that's parcel 234 and 235. But they did say in their last meeting that they would consider pursuing it in the future. And that's something that I think we should be keeping our eye on because of the access issues at Omaha and Hiawatha. So
I,
something to look at. I don't know if it's an immediate concern. I don't think so.
both those items have been removed in the sense that the Open Space Committee is not going to propose either of those parcels on Sewell's Gutter. They may change their mind about one of them because one of the parcels is just pure salt marsh. And they may want to preserve that, but then there's another parcel which is next to the road that leads out to Sewell Gutters on the north side, Hiawatha, I think it is. Yeah, and that one's going to stay off. I had also listed as one of the items that I wanted to bring up Omaha Beach Road. And the whole access down to the south end of Indian Neck. So Sewell's Gutter would be part of that. And I think that should go on a future agenda.
John?
Yeah,
So I referred earlier to these questions which have gone out to town council quite some time ago, so we should be hearing back. Because our status may or may not have changed. When I say we, I mean the town. In relation to those private subdivision roads, which include Hiawatha, Omaha, and King Philip Road, okay? They're all in the same subdivision, right? So
Yep.
they're private. And they were all part of the same subdivision, as was Sewell's Gutter. I checked that with Denny O'Connell, who is the chair of the Conservation Trust, which owns Sewell's Gutter, for those of you that are newer on this committee or newer in town stuff. So one of the questions I asked, and we don't know the answer, is what are the rights? What rights do the property owners in the subdivision have if we're a property owner and we've bought something that used to be in this subdivision? We may not have rights equal to everybody else in that subdivision. Everybody in a subdivision can use the ways in a subdivision. That may not work for us because the lot, the huge 254 acre lot that we bought in 2019, the Hidelta Trust lot, right, intertitle, isn't shown on a subdivision map, even though it was part of that property because of the colonial ordinance that gave people on the upland there ownership rights. Okay, so I'm giving you a little bit of the context that these questions have been sent in about. And once again, I'll get back to you about it, right? So keep the questions hanging there in the air and we'll get some answers presently. Thank you.
thank you, Helen. That's helpful to know. I'm glad we're going to town council. Any other, so the whole issue of Omaha Beach, Sewell's Gutter, going down to the southwest end of Indian Neck, has to come back on our agenda. Are there any other suggestions?
Nancy has one in the chat.
I was wondering about, I know that I'm talking about the Lieutenant Island Boathouse access. And I believe that the access road is owned by Audubon and that the parcel with the path across it is owned by the Aggers. In the past, the Aggers had been interested in selling that to the town, I think, and then there was some problem with the terms. I don't know. I just think that that would be a really important one, both for recreational and commercial harvesters. If we could look at that as a long-term plan, both with Audubon and with the Aggers, to see if we could get that as a town landing in perpetuity. I think it's a really, really important access point, also for grant holders that are on Lieutenant Island side. So I know that it's going to be much more complicated because the access road is not owned by the town. It's owned by Audubon, but I think it's worthwhile to, start taking little bites at the apple.
That's great. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I completely slipped my mind. The Open Space Committee has actually been trying to work with the aggers about this, and I think we're a bit stuck, so it'd be worth our while to try to unstick it.
Thanks.
I had a few things myself, but I'm sort of holding the floor open for some other suggestions or comments. There's one other that's particularly shellfishing as well. If you go back to the Irene Payne's video, she talks about a parcel which is on the south end of Chipman's Cove. There's some big open space there as you drive out, and I think her point of view is that there at one time the citizens of Wellfleet thought that there was an access to the cove there, and there had been several signs I've seen over the years that say private, don't go here. I think we should re-examine that issue. So I'll try to be more precise in time for the next meeting. The other, I had 3 other issues, all of which go back to some discussions I had with NRAB. Herring Pond, which is up close to Gull Pond, is 10 acres in area, and the state has a rule that any great pond, which is 10 acres or above, should have an access point for the public. Herring Pond does not have that. So I'd like us to consider sometime in the future looking at that. There is a small pond in the center of Wellfleet. If you go down Squires Road, you get to Squires Pond. And the town owns a small parcel on the border of that pond. If you ever get a chance to go down there and look out, it's actually a very lovely place right in the middle of town. So I'd like to see if we could turn that into a small place that people could go. It's a lovely little pond. Most people don't know about it, but it's right downtown Wellfleet. And the third is another pond, which is on Payne Hollow Road. As you drive out on the left-hand side, there's a pond which doesn't have an official name. I've heard of it talked about as skating pond, which is a bit dangerous now because there's never enough ice to go skating. But that is in the process of becoming, at least the access to it, town property. And again, that's a place that could be fixed up for as a recreational site. Herring Pond would be a good place for kayaking. I did try, full disclosure, once to go kayaking on Skating Pond, which I managed to do, but I got chased off by the mosquitoes. So you might want to be aware of that. So I think the next agenda will spend these 3 issues I talked about. There's no urgency to them, but Omaha Beach, Sewell's Gutter, and the the boathouse on the south side of Lieutenant Island are immediately important. And then I'd also like to hear from, I'd also like to pin down that access that Sonia uses. If I'm going to apply to town, the town administrator to see if we can get some budget money on the agenda, I will do that as soon as we hang up here. Anyone like to suggest a number?
Did you say the NRAB gets 1,000?
I ought to remember the number. It's either 1,000 or 1,500. The simplest suggestion is that we should ask for what NRAB asks for, and if it, I would tend to go toward the high end, 1,500. You have, I was thinking to myself, what are the things that we might need money for over the next year? And there are two things. Is one, the legal opinions. Well, for that we go through town council, and there's a contract with town council. So the select board would have to approve it, but there is potentially funding there. The other is some surveying, because at a number of these parcels out on Lieutenant Island, I'm thinking particularly of the area along Way 100. One is not quite clear at any given time on whose land one is standing. And it might be useful to have a surveyor come out and do some work, and that the cost for that would be about $1,000. So if we had 1,500, we'd have a little flexibility, and we'd know better a year from now if we need to ask for more. So I have a motion for 1,500.
Second.
Second?
Yeah.
Sonia made a motion. I'll second. All in favor, please raise hand. Okay, 4-0, Sonia. Sonia's our clerk, so she's the one that has to keep the record. So I'll ask the town administrator.
We had also talked about potentially making Way 100 an access point all the way out through the town-owned land. Or at least I think Jim was talking about it, and I don't know if we want to keep talking about it.
I think that's, I want to be sure that comes up on February the 1st. I hadn't forgotten about that. The people call the end of Way 100, the south end, Turtle Point. And so you'll hear people refer to it as Turtle Point. But to get from that south end, assuming we could find an access way to get out to that south end, out to the shellfishing point, we also have to get the permission of Audubon. And I think we ought to ask the question, but if they wouldn't let us walk across sand at the southwest corner, they may be even more reluctant to have us walk across marsh.
Can I just interject?
Yep.
They can't actually stop somebody who is fishing, fouling, or navigating from crossing their property because of the colonial ordinances that Helen spoke of earlier. So if somebody is, they can stop with a vehicle, but they can't stop somebody from traversing their property if they're on their way to do fishing. That's my understanding of that law.
I think, Nancy, it'd be great if that was the interpretation.
I can send you something that the state put out.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, I'm imagining that I own, let's say I own property on Chipman's Cove, which I don't. And there's a nice shellfishing beach does that imply that you would have right to walk across my property to get to the shellfishing beach? And I thought,
That's my understanding. But I have like a blog post that DMF did, and I'll email that to everybody after this. It's
Nancy,
like, it explains it.
yeah, Nancy, I think that would be good, and it's a critical point. We have to be on very solid legal ground before we try to implement that. Because if I were an owner and I was told, well, shellfishermen have a right to walk across to my beach, I might get aggravated. And I'm sure other owners would get very aggravated. So we have to be sure about that, but let's find out.
John, it's Helen.
Yep.
Through you to Nancy. Nancy, that would be great. I'm not sure if that doesn't only apply to intertidal areas that are owned, as I described earlier, because of that colonial ordinance, right? But will you please copy me with what you send?
Yeah, public rights along the shoreline. So yeah, I mean, you're bringing up a
Yeah.
good
I'm saying what John said.
point. You're
I'm-
right, it
I'm-
says tidelands, so.
Yeah, I'm echoing what John said, but all of you should have a copy of that colonial ordinance so you can see what it consists of. And the other thing is, I hesitate to bring this up because I have not read it. I can't confirm this. I hope you all hear me qualifying this. But I've had a number of conversations with Harry Turkanian about the whole issue of access to public landings, town landings, right? To public properties. And that are used by the public. For example, the beach in the Hedilta property is now a public beach, right? We all know that. I'm not talking about the intertidal area, although that gets pretty intertidal. And apparently there's a case that he gave me the name of that I haven't read yet and council hasn't spoken about yet, which says that people can use private ways to get to publicly used areas. And that would cover people with commercial permits, right? Accessing intertidal lands, right? That's public
And
use.
recreational.
Yeah, and recreational in parts, but we're thinking about, yes, and recreational with permits. It doesn't cover people who have farms because that's not public use, right? So I don't know about this yet, neither do you, but that's the kind of thing your committee, it's right under your charge. Okay, thank you.
I'm just thinking, Helen, and Nancy also, that Helen had mentioned 3 issues that have gone to town council having to do with access. It might be good that once we have received those at one of our future meetings to see if a member of the town council staff could join our meeting and we could discuss these issues, raise questions. When I was on the Mayo Creek Committee, we had some issues like that come up, and we did something similar, and it was very helpful. Because as we talk about an issues, we think of questions, and it'd be good to have someone there who could answer for us. We can't get town council, maybe we can get Harry. So that's something to put on. Let's think about that in the future.
John, it's Helen again.
Yeah.
Let me respond to that. So this is just me talking, right? One person on the select board. I'm not saying this as someone who represents the select board when I'm in this meeting. Although all of us on the select board go to different committees and stuff. You know, we do what I'm doing this morning. So here's the thing. A lot of money has been spent on town council. And what I suggest, and John, you know about this already, given that apparently the climate right now is to not all the time go to town council because it's so expensive.
Cost,
So
yeah.
formulate your questions together. You see, you're going to have some answers coming because the select board has asked town council about stuff that will affect you. So you don't have to worry about that. That is not money you have to pay. But if you formulate the questions together, right, you will weed out what you already know before you ask them. Because having town council come to one of your meetings, sure, the TA and the select board may say, fine, we want to spend the money on that. Or I don't know what the rest of them would say. I would be supportive, but we're trying to be very budget minded this year. Thank you.
Fair point. Something to put on future thinking. What I was interested in is we could formulate questions, and what I imagine is we formulate a question, we'd hear an answer. Lawyers' answers always tend to be full of if, ands, and buts, so that leads to further questions for clarification. And that is probably how this would proceed. The last thing I have on the agenda that we have not, well, I suppose two things, but the first thing that we haven't talked about is minutes from our meeting on October the 19th. Sonia, I don't know if did you send those out?
Yep, yeah, I sent them out.
Okay. This is something just for Melissa, Sonia, and myself, because Steve was not at the meeting. Melissa, did you have any corrections, changes?
I don't believe so. It's been a long time since the meeting. So. I think when I looked at it, it looks great.
That's what I thought. Sonia does an excellent job. So I would like a motion to approve. Melissa, if you make the motion, I'll second it.
A motion to approve the minutes
As submitted
as submitted
for October the 19th.
for October the 19th.
Second, all in favor? Sonia, you get to vote too. You
Yes.
can approve your own minutes. And what you need to do now, Sonia, is to send them to the town clerk, Jennifer Congal, and say, these were
Or Rebecca
approved.
Eldridge, right?
Yeah. Or Rebecca Eldridge, either one, and they will get posted on the website for our committee. So February 1st, I guess what I'll do is propose another meeting sometime along about the 10-ish of February, after this meeting of February the 1st. Because I hope at that meeting that some of these Lieutenant Island issues get clarified. The short-term thing I have to do is to see if we can get $1,500 for a budget next year.
Do we want to?
Excuse me?
Do we want to decide which areas we're going to focus on and what we're going to come back to at the next meeting?
I want to hear what is said on February the 1st.
Okay. Okay.
Who's your friend? But I guess it's fair is after the February the 1st, maybe I'll send out a draft agenda and we can hack away at it before it's official. I'm afraid, Melissa, if I put anything together now, it would look pretty much like we just talked about, and we need to focus down on something a little more concrete. Also, we should hear from Nancy about Chipman's Cove, and we'll be able to take a position on that.
John, can
Um,
you just CC me when you send it out so that I am in your loop? Because I'd like to continue to participate and provide feedback if it's helpful. So when you send out your agenda, could you CC me?
Yep,
That way
Will
I'll know
do.
to attend the meeting. Great.
okay, sure.
And then Steve, if you put your email in the chat box, then I'll copy you on this email that I'm sending out to everybody. Thanks.
Steve, how are you doing? Are you a bit overwhelmed, or you think you see where we're going, or all of the above?
I think your microphone's on.
I think Steve, well, you're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, all of the above.
We'll see if the weather, have you been out to look at any of these sites in person?
Yes, I've been out to Lieutenant Island, Way 100 and Lieutenant Island, southwest corner.
Okay,
I don't know where the boathouse is.
okay.
Anybody, can anybody tell me that?
Yes, if you
Yeah.
want, you go straight down, straight over the bridge, straight up the hill. And then at the bottom of the hill, do you have 4-wheel drive?
No.
Okay, so you'll see like a sand road going off to your right.
Yep.
Go straight, and then there's like a little intersection, and you take that right, and then you kind of keep to your right, and it brings you out. I think it's called Blue Heron.
Okay.
And yeah, that's and then the boathouse is, if you park there at the end, the access path is on your left.
And there actually is a boathouse?
Yeah, a little tiny boathouse on your left as you come across the path.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
In the
boathouse-
northwest corner, go ahead, John, sorry.
I was just wanted to make sure that Steve, that to get to the boathouse, you have to go right to the shore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nancy.
I had stepped away because I had a phone call when you guys were talking about the northwest corner where Sonia has access. I think it's called 2nd Avenue, and there's a split rail fence there, and that is an access down like a stone staircase. If you go forward, and on the left, there's a wooden staircase. Those to me look like they are on subdivision roads. They're subdivision roads. They don't look like they're part of anybody's personal property. And all I know is that it's been a site that is constantly patrolled by the Shellfish Department because it's used by both commercial and recreational fishermen to access those flats that basically, if you looked across, you'd be looking at kind of Field Point and Indian Neck. I had stepped away, so I didn't get to contribute that before. I don't know if that's helpful.
I think all of the shell fishermen here appreciate that when you're accessing shell fishing, there's almost nowhere in Wellfleet that you don't go by, through, or around private properties, and respecting those private property owners is a good insurance for future use. My opinion is that shell fishermen are all aware of that, but it's worth remembering.
I have a question.
Yep.
The streets between the parcels, is there a way to find out who owns them, or is there a default?
I think that's one of the questions. I think that's one of the questions that Helen mentioned is gone to town council.
Okay.
Hi, John, may I answer Melissa's question?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Melissa. And by the way, a tip for the chair of the next meeting. Do you see how formal I'm being, that I try to go through, get recognized by the chair before I start blah, blah? Okay, so here's the thing. If you want to know who owns a lot, you go to the town website, go to the assessors department, and you access the assessors maps, okay? And you write down which map and which lot And then you can find out who owns it by calling the assessor's office. And they will tell you, it's public information. And the other thing you need to know about subdivisions is, and this is really important. I used to be on the planning board, which is why I sound so sure of myself. Planning board is all about subdivisions. There can be roads that you would see on the assessor's map in a subdivision, and there's actually in real life no road there. But those layouts for roads cannot be built on or blocked for the people in the subdivision who use it, okay? They can't be built on. You can't put a shed on it. You can't put a fence on it. And even if it's just in the middle of the woods, if it's on the assessor's map, it's a way in the subdivision. So that's another sort of interesting factoid that you have to keep in mind. So when you're looking at a lot, so I just told you two different things, and Nancy Vale is our assessor, and Jennifer, I'm so bad at names, is the person who works with her. And you can just find out what the lot number is, find out which map number it is, and then just call up and ask who owns it. Thank you.
Helen, actually there's a search possibility directly on the assessor's website. If you look over on the left, it talks somewhere about assessor's values and maps. I can't remember exactly what it's called. You click on that and you go to a search engine. And if you put in the parcel, the map and the parcel number, it'll show you the ownership, the value, and details about that particular piece of land.
Yes, I've done that. By the way, I just got a text back from the TA. During the meeting, I texted her and said, I'm at the Public Access Committee. Any joy from KP Law regarding those subdivision related questions? And she wrote back, not yet, I'll poke at them today. Okay. So I am fine.
Thank you for the
Okay.
follow-up.
Thank
Nancy,
you.
Helen, thank you for helping us with the meeting. We've got, we're going to get clarification on the work in question. Melissa, I will work with you on the next meeting. Sonia, thank you for the minutes. Steve, I hope you're learning enough that you feel confident about pitching in the future. We look forward to that. So without objection, I think the meeting is closed. Have a good week.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Byron.
John, you need to vote on that. I hate to tell you.
Ah, yes.
Uh,
There's a difference between us, Helen. You obey all the rules, and I think rules are an inconvenience.
Well,
May I have a
no.
motion?
I think they're a big drag, and in my profession, believe me, there are very few rules. The only thing is you want to make the meeting as legitimate as possible in case things get challenged. That's the only reason.
May I
Thank you.
may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
Seconds? I guess there's a motion and a second. I made the motion. Sonia seconded it. Is there a vote? All in favor of? Sonia, you voting?
Yep.
We have agreed to adjourn the meeting. My good wishes still remain. Take care.